Hi, John. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, we have a question this week, John, from Jade, and she's thinking of quitting her job and joining a co-working facility, and she's wondering why you think so many people are making that decision.
Well, I love your name, Jade. I think it's just natural, right? It's just the way work has changed. I mean, our definition of work from even 5 years ago is different than it is today, and I think in 5 more years it's going to continue to evolve. I mean, for instance, I have an office in downtown Santa Barbara. I have an office at UCSB, and yet 90% of the time I just work from home. I'm just working out of my house. We have so many mobile work solutions like the GoToMeeting that I was lucky to be a part of, and then things like Zoom and even Google Hangout, and just the fact that we all have a computer in our pockets that would have been a supercomputer 10 years ago. It just makes it easy to not be tethered to an office. I mean, in the old days, you kind of either you traveled to your customers or your partners, or you sat in your office and you sat in front of a computer and you had a landline phone, and that's how you communicated. Obviously, those days are over. What's funny is we're even seeing some of the large companies that are mimicking the co-working architecture. So it's kind of come full circle. In the old days, the real old days, everyone had an office. Then there was everyone just thrown in a cube. And now, because of all the good research that's been done about the way ideas form and people collaborate, we're seeing big companies mimic a co-working environment. You actually go in there. I was at Graphic down there in Summerlin, and they have a weight facility, and they have just a gaming facility, and all. It's all right there in the same work environment in a very open pattern. And I think it's because it's better for the employees. It's more productive, right?
So I was just out at Decker's and took a tour out there, and their top floor is entirely that way now.
Yeah. Right.
And I wonder, I was just reading, so the new generation, which is 1995 on, is being called the iGen. And these are up and coming. They're not in the workforce yet, but they are the first generation that don't remember anything but social media.
Yep.
And the millennials aren't quite that much. But Jane and I were talking when we first started this show, and we're like, I wonder if part of co-working is that some of or many of the millennials, certainly all the iGens, are so lost in devices and social media that maybe on some other level they're craving like this interaction. I know you're not a psychologist, but what do you think about that?
But I can play one on the radio, though, right? No, I think you're absolutely right. So I think in this, some people call it the gig economy. This economy that we're in now, especially with young people, where they might have multiple jobs. They might drive for Uber. They might be a writer. They might be writing copy for a startup. They just have multiple things that help them pay the bills. I think they are craving that community. And when I look, why are co-working spaces successful? One of the reasons, there's multiple reasons, but one of them is that comes to my mind is what Steven Johnson has talked quite a bit about. He wrote a book on How We Got to Now. He did a PBS series, and one of the things he talks about are these epiphanies that percolate up, but then they need to be thrown into the mix with other people. So you don't sit in a dark room and just think really hard and then come up with a great idea, right? You go to a coffee shop back in the 17th century, or now you're still going to a coffee shop. But you're talking about your ideas. You're debating your ideas. You're sharing your ideas with people you respect. Now you can do that virtually, and we do that virtually all the time with social media. But there's no substitute for actually sitting down, almost like the old salon days in 1920s Paris, where people would sit down and debate ideas in real time, and then everyone hopefully would come away with at least a better understanding of their own ideas, and hopefully a better appreciation for other ideas.
It's interesting what you're saying about coffee shops, because when I got involved in co-working, all these facilities pointed out to me that it's actually cheaper to join a co-working facility than go to a coffee shop every day, because they give free coffee, free snacks. And as you said, you've got the fitness.
But I think you can control I don't think I would want to work out of a coffee shop every day, because it's
hard to do that, John.
But it's hard to Hey, I'm not down on people that did it. But I think for me, it would be hard to control the chaos. Like I listen to music and I do my own thing when I'm working. And you never know in a coffee shop, right? Yeah. You get the blowhard
and the dirty looks from the barista. You've been there
really?
long enough, Jane. Yeah.
Do you know enough about, I'm sure you probably do, but I'm just thinking about past innovations. And has anything ever really been created in a vacuum? Like, you look back, Alexander Graham Bell, I don't know, was he shooting his ideas off people? I mean, has co-working always been?
So this guy, Steven Johnson, has written a couple books. In one of them, he looks at that very issue. He looks at the myth of the lone inventor versus the reality. And he identifies a couple of inventions. The one that I remember was the air conditioner, of all things. That literally he built up on the work of other people, but he ended up kind of doing that on his own. It was unusual. Most ideas, almost all ideas, and I really recommend Johnson's books. They're very interesting. He goes into detail about how collaboration was really at the heart of most pivot ideas. In fact, I'll give you one more. He talks about the advent of the computer, and there was a lone individual, I think he was in the Midwest, that struggled with trying to build a computer. Contrast that with the group at University of Pennsylvania that created ENIAC and ENIAC, the two real first computers. And it's a great contrast. The one person who was working alone had to solve all of these problems. How do I do storage? How do I do printing? Whereas this other group could divvy up the problem. You work on printing, you work on storage, I'll work on this. And it's quite a contrast. The other gentleman made a lot of progress, but he hit a dead end. He just got to a point where he couldn't continue to innovate on his own.
Well, what's great, again, what I see about these co-working facilities is you have all these different skills in the same room. There's somebody over there who's a digital marketer, and there's somebody over there who's a videographer, and there's a writer over there. Great networking.
Yeah. Hey, before we let you go this week, you mentioned Johnson. Can you give us his first and last name?
Yeah, sorry, I said it quickly. Yeah. So Stephen Johnson, and one of the books is How We Got to Now, and that's the one that has the PBS series associated with it.
It sounds fascinating.
Yeah, he's a great writer, too.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, Jade. Hopefully we answered your question, and keep sending them in.
Send in your questions, and John will be joining us next week. It's AskJohn at coworkradio.com. John, always a pleasure. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, good luck, Jade.